The rain had finally stopped, but the city still glistened like it was holding its breath. Streetlights reflected off wet sidewalks, and the air had that clean after-storm smell: cold stone, damp leaves, a little smoke from somewhere far off. Michael Harris walked with his hands in his coat pockets, his shoulders relaxed on purpose, because he'd been looking forward to this night for days. Not because it was fancy, because it was supposed to be easy. Just dinner, a quiet table, a moment where he didn't have to perform competence or manage other people's assumptions. He'd promised himself that when the week ended, he'd do something normal, something that didn't require strategy. The restaurant was called Lark and Vine, one of those places people posted on Instagram with captions like Hidden Gem and Best Kept Secret, even though the reservation list was booked out for weeks and the lighting inside looked expensive by design. Michael had reserved a table 3 days ago, right after a late meeting, while he was still at his desk. He remembered it clearly: the website, the time slots, the confirmation email with the friendly line, "We look forward to welcoming you," and a reservation code at the bottom. 7:30 p.m. Table for one. He'd chosen one on purpose. Sometimes dining alone felt like freedom. When he reached the entrance, the warm glow behind the windows made the place look like a film set. Candlelight, dark wood, soft laughter, people leaning close to each other in that relaxed way that comes from knowing you belong. Michael pushed the door open. Heat washed over him. The smell of roasted garlic, wine, and bread hit his senses. A subtle jazz track floated under the clink of glasses. The room was full, every table occupied, and somehow still quiet, like the sound was being managed the way the decor was. Near the entrance stood a host stand. Behind it was a white hostess, mid-20s, blonde hair styled perfectly, black dress, small gold necklace, the kind of minimal elegance that looked effortless because it was practiced. Her name tag read Chloe. Chloe glanced up as Michael approached. Her eyes touched his face, then moved past him like she was already looking for the next person. "Hi," Michael said politely. "Reservation for Michael Harris, 7:30. Chloe's smile appeared and disappeared in the same second. She looked down at the book, flipped a page, then she tapped at a tablet beside the book, her nails clicking softly, her eyebrows pinched. "I'm not seeing that," she said. Michael blinked. "Not seeing it?" Chloe shook her head slightly, still looking at the screen. "No reservation under that name." Michael kept his voice calm. "It should be there. I booked online. I have the confirmation." Chloe looked up again, just long enough to give him a thin smile. "We're fully booked tonight." Michael felt the first little tightening in his chest. He'd been in this moment before. Different places, same shape. A door that had been open suddenly presented as closed, not with hostility, with politeness, with a smile that said, "Please don't make me deal with you." "I understand you're busy," Michael said evenly, "but I do have a reservation." Chloe's expression stayed pleasant, but something in her eyes sharpened. "Sometimes the system double books, or the reservation didn't go through." Michael nodded slowly. "It went through. I got an email." Chloe exhaled lightly, like she didn't have time for this. "Do you have another name it might be under?" "No," Michael said. "Michael Harris." Chloe glanced behind him, toward the line forming at the door. A white couple in coats had stepped in, laughing. The man checked his watch and looked around like he expected someone to greet him personally. Chloe's smile brightened as her eyes moved to them. "Hi, welcome," she chirped, her energy suddenly warmer, lighter. "Reservation?" The man grinned. "Yeah, Carter, 7:30. Chloe's fingers tapped the tablet. "Oh, perfect," she said instantly. "Right this way." No pause, no frown, no, system might not have gone through. Michael stood there as Chloe stepped out from behind the stand and led them toward the dining room. The couple didn't look at him. They slipped past like he was part of the decor. Michael waited. He didn't want to assume. He didn't want to read intent into everything. He didn't want to be the man who made it about race every time something felt wrong. But he also didn't want to be naive. Chloe returned to the stand and looked at him like she'd forgotten he was still there. "Sorry," she said, voice light. "We really don't have you listed." Michael's jaw tightened slightly. "Can you check again?" he asked. Chloe's smile thinned. "I already did." Michael nodded once, then pulled his phone out of his pocket. "Okay," he said calmly. "I'll make it easier. Here's the email." He opened his inbox, searched the restaurant name, and the confirmation popped up immediately. Lark and Vine. Reservation confirmed name. Michael Harris. Time 7:30 p.m. Party 1 code LV-20419. He held the phone out so Chloe could see. Chloe's eyes scanned it. For the first time her expression changed. Subtle, but real. Her lips parted slightly. She blinked, then she straightened, and her smile returned. "Oh," she said. "That's interesting." Michael didn't move. "So it exists." Chloe reached for the tablet, her fingers suddenly quicker. "Let me try searching by code," she said, like that idea had just come to her. Michael watched her type in LV-20419. He saw it happen on her face the moment the system answered. Her posture loosened. Her eyes widened just a fraction. Her smile became warmer, suddenly professional in a new way. "Oh, yes," she said brightly. "Okay, I see it now." Michael held her gaze. "So you couldn't find it under my name," he said quietly, "but you can find it under the code." Chloe gave a small laugh. Too light, too quick. The system can be weird. Michael didn't laugh. Chloe tapped again. "All right, you're checked in." Michael glanced into the dining room. "So where's my table?" Chloe hesitated. "Well?" The well hung like a warning. Chloe's eyes flicked toward a server station, then toward the dining room, then back to Michael. "We can seat you at the bar," she said. Michael blinked. "I booked a table." Chloe's smile stayed in place, but it felt strained. "We're extremely full." Michael kept his voice calm. "You seated Carter immediately." Chloe's eyes narrowed slightly. "They were on the list." Michael's tone stayed even. "So am I. The log proves it." Chloe's face tightened. She glanced over Michael's shoulder again, toward the door. More people were coming in now, mostly white couples, dressed for a Friday night, comfortable in the certainty that their reservations would be honored. Michael felt the pressure build in the room. The unspoken question, is he going to cause a scene? He didn't. He took a slow breath and said, "Please seat me at the table I reserved." Chloe's voice cooled. "If you'd like to speak to a manager," "Yes," Michael said immediately. "I would." Chloe looked surprised that he didn't back down. She turned and disappeared into the dining room. Michael waited by the host stand, phone still in his hand, confirmation email open like a key. A minute passed. 2. A white couple arrived and Chloe returned just long enough to greet them with a bright smile. "Reservation name?" They gave it. Chloe found it instantly. "Wonderful, right this way." She didn't look at Michael as she walked away again. Michael's stomach tightened, but his face stayed neutral. He wasn't going to be erased quietly. Finally, a man approached from the dining room. White, late 30s, wearing a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled, an apron tied neatly around his waist. He had the posture of someone who'd learned how to be charming and firm at the same time. His expression was polite, but his eyes held impatience. "Hi," he said. "I'm Daniel, floor manager. There's some confusion about your reservation?" Michael nodded. "Not confusion. I have a confirmed reservation. Chloe said it wasn't on the list until I showed her the code. Now she's offering me the bar instead of the table I booked." Daniel's smile tightened slightly. "We're incredibly busy tonight." Michael held his phone out. "Here's the confirmation. Code LV-20419. Daniel glanced at it, then nodded. "Okay, I see." Michael waited. Daniel didn't take the phone. He didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge the first denial. He just said, "We can try to accommodate you at the bar, or you can wait for a table to open up." Michael stared at him. "That's not accommodation," Michael said calmly. "That's downgrade." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "Sir..." Michael's voice stayed even, but it carried weight now. "I made a reservation for a table. I arrived on time. I have proof. I want what I reserved." A silence opened between them. Daniel's gaze moved over Michael, quick and subtle. Clothes, posture, presence, like he was measuring whether Michael was worth the effort. Michael felt that calculation and held steady. Daniel exhaled. "Let me check the table log." Michael nodded. "Please." Daniel turned and walked back into the dining room, toward a podium with another tablet system, something staff used that guests weren't supposed to see. Michael watched him speak to Chloe, watched Chloe gesture toward Michael with a small shrug, like he was an inconvenience that should have gone away. Daniel typed, then paused, typed again. And Michael saw Daniel's posture change, the same change Chloe had made earlier, the moment the system forced reality to appear. Daniel looked back at Michael with a different face now, less dismissive, more careful. He returned to the stand and cleared his throat. "Mr. Harris," he said, voice smoother, "your reservation is confirmed. There appears to have been an issue with how it displayed." Michael nodded slowly. "Sure," Daniel continued, "we do have your table. It's just currently occupied." Michael blinked. "Occupied? At my reservation time?" Daniel's smile became tight. "The prior party is running a little long." Michael looked into the dining room again. He could see a two-top near the window, empty plates, wine glasses, people still laughing, relaxed, lingering. A white couple. They looked like they belonged so much that time itself made space for them. Michael's chest tightened. Daniel spoke quickly. "If you're willing to wait a bit, we can seat you." Michael raised a hand gently, not aggressive. "How long?" Daniel hesitated. 10, 15 minutes. Michael nodded once. "Okay." Daniel looked relieved, like he'd expected resistance. Michael continued calmly. "But I want it noted in the log that I arrived on time and that the reservation was initially denied." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "We don't..." Michael's voice stayed even. "Your table log proves bookings. It should also prove arrivals and changes. I want it documented." Daniel stared at him. Then he forced a smile. "We'll do our best." Michael nodded. "Thank you." Daniel gestured toward a small waiting area by the bar. "Please, have a seat. We'll call you." Michael walked to the waiting area and sat, coat still on, phone in hand. He watched Chloe greet more guests, smiling brightly, tapping the tablet, leading them in. He watched the room continue to move smoothly for everyone except him. 10 minutes passed. 15, 20. Michael glanced at the window table again. The white couple was still there. The server refilled their water. They laughed. They weren't being rushed. Michael felt his jaw tighten. He stood and walked back to the host stand. Chloe looked up, and her smile tightened like she'd been bracing for this. "We're still waiting," she said quickly, before he even spoke. Michael nodded. "I can see that. How much longer?" Chloe's eyes flicked toward the window table, then back. "They're finishing up." Michael kept his voice calm. "Are you going to ask them to close out?" Chloe's expression hardened. "We don't rush guests." Michael stared at her. "But you rushed me out of my reservation," he said quietly. Chloe's cheeks flushed. "That's not what happened." Michael didn't raise his voice. "I arrived on time," he said. "My reservation was ignored until I provided a code. Then I was offered the bar, then told my table is occupied. Meanwhile, you seated other guests immediately. I'm not accusing, I'm describing." Chloe's mouth tightened. Daniel appeared again, moving fast now, as if he sensed the situation was about to become visible. "Mr. Harris," Daniel said, voice soothing. "We're working on it." Michael held his gaze. "I'm sure." Daniel's eyes flicked to Chloe, then back to Michael. "We can offer you a complimentary drink while you wait." Michael smiled slightly, but it wasn't warm. "I don't want a drink," he said. "I want the table." Daniel's smile faltered. Michael's voice stayed calm, but it became quiet in a way that made people listen. "Open the table log," he said. "Show me the seating order for 7:30. Show me when my table was assigned and to whom." Chloe stiffened. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "We don't show internal systems to guests." Michael nodded. "Then stop using internal systems to deny what you already know is true." Silence. The people at the bar glanced over. Someone stopped laughing mid-sentence. The room didn't freeze, but it shifted. Daniel took a slow breath. "Please," he said, "let's step aside." Michael nodded. "Sure." Daniel guided him a few feet away from the stand toward a quieter corner near the wine display. "Mr. Harris," Daniel said carefully, "we're not trying to disrespect you." Michael looked at him steadily. "Then stop doing it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "We have limited control over how quickly tables turn." Michael nodded. "You have full control over who gets seated first, who gets told we don't have you, and who gets offered a downgrade." Daniel's face went tight with discomfort. Michael continued, calm and precise. "I'm not here to ruin your night," he said. "I'm here to have mine, and it's hard not to notice the pattern." Daniel swallowed. For the first time, his eyes looked less annoyed and more cautious, because now the story wasn't just about a table, it was about what the table represented. Daniel glanced back toward the host stand. Chloe was watching, tense. Daniel exhaled, then said quietly, "Give me 2 minutes." He walked back to the podium system. Michael watched him type again, this time with urgency. Then Daniel looked up and signaled a server. A server moved toward the window table. Michael watched the server lean down, speak to the white couple. The couple's faces tightened in surprise. The man looked annoyed. The woman's smile faded. The server spoke again, gesturing politely. The couple reluctantly reached for their check presenter. Michael felt his chest loosen slightly. Not triumph, just confirmation that urgency could appear when it was finally applied equally. Daniel returned, face controlled. "Mr. Harris," he said, "your table will be ready in 3 minutes." Michael nodded. "Thank you." Daniel added quickly, "And dessert is on us tonight." Michael paused. He didn't want dessert as a bribe. He wanted respect as a baseline. But he also understood that sometimes you took the small wins because they were proof the system could be pressured. "Okay," Michael said. "I appreciate it." 3 minutes later, Chloe approached, expression stiff, and gestured toward the window table. "Right this way," she said. Her voice was polite, but it lacked warmth now. It wasn't friendly, it was compliance. Michael followed her. As he sat at the table, the candlelight flickered against the glass, and the city lights outside blurred into soft gold. For a moment, the restaurant looked like what it was supposed to be, calm, beautiful, normal. But Michael's body was still carrying the weight of the entrance. He unfolded his napkin slowly, placed it on his lap, and looked around. The people at nearby tables had returned to their conversations. The bar laughter resumed. The music kept playing like it hadn't witnessed anything. Michael took a slow breath. This wasn't the kind of battle you won with shouting. It was the kind you won by refusing to accept the invisible, by asking for logs, by asking for proof, by making the system say the quiet part out loud. And tonight, at least, it had. End of story.